PR Connections Radio presents the Love of Business Podcast. The Love of Business, nurturing the entrepreneurial spirit. This show is brought to you by Paid Per Letter. Write letters and make a difference. paidperletter.com/Uncle Dan.
All right. Welcome to the Love of Business podcast. I'm your co-host, Davin Edgar. Joined with me today is Edgar Rodriguez. We don't have a guest, so we'll both just kind of introduce ourselves with our 1-minute introduction, just so you can kind of get to know us in case this is your first time tuning in. We're going to talk about business today, check in with each other on life, and we're just going to let the conversation go in a direction that's going to help you succeed in business. So, Edgar, can you go ahead, remind the audience who you are and what you do?
Yeah, and good morning to everyone tuning in. My name's Edgar Rodriguez. I am the founder of Master the Network, and what we do, simple, is me and my team have the ability to come into companies, do business valuations, and roadmap what that business journey looks like. Not just for a successful exit, right? But just giving them the tools of like, hey, as I'm building and putting this business together, you learn from the lens of a buyer's perspective, right? Or an investor. So in short, that's what we do. And Davin, tell us a little bit about you and your business.
Yeah, absolutely. So I call myself a real estate entrepreneur. So I coach agents on how to succeed in the real estate industry. I help clients as well. That's how I'm able to coach agents, is from that one-on-one direct perspective. And just like how Edgar helps people prepare for retirement and prepare for what that buyer's looking for, I'm the one who actually builds the relationships with those buyers. And so when people are ready to retire, they'll call somebody like me, create a strategy on how to get the best price in order to sell their assets. So with that being said, Edgar, do you have any conversation topics you want to get started on talking about today?
I do. So today, later this afternoon, I'm going to be speaking at an event, and the conversations about strategic partnerships, right? And the importance of building relationships. So something I wanted to talk about within the love of business, right, is that journey of building those know, like, and trust type relationships. And what that does, the ripple effect, right? You think about when you throw a rock into the water, it usually just sinks. But the ripples, right, that create long-term, what that does in strategic partnerships and in business, right? Not just in business, but just in life in general. So with that, Davin, how have you found those relationships in building them, right? And not necessarily selling to them directly, but just getting to know them?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a mentality that if you don't build friendships when you don't need them, you won't have them when you do need them, right? And we live in a world where it really does pay to have friends. And when I say it pays to have friends, like, if you're stuck on the side of the road, flat tire, right? Or you locked your keys outside of your car, right? And you need your buddy to come just drive over to you to get some supplies to you, right? I mean, you might owe them a beer, or, you might, return the favor another time. You want to call a professional tow truck company to do the exact same thing. I mean, you're looking at hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, right? So, like, sometimes the cost savings of having friends is very relevant, but also, like Edgar had mentioned, like when it comes to sales, if all you're doing is just direct selling to people, you're only building the relationship when you need them, when you need that buyer, right? And so I'm constantly being proactive about building relationships. And then suddenly when there's an opportunity to make money, I already have the connections made, and I already know, hey, this person is a buyer for this particular thing. I can make that connection right there, make some money. They get an amazing product, and they get to work with somebody that they trust. And they get to save a lot of time because they don't have to go out and build that relationship when they need the product. So that's how I've been able to use relationships strategically, and then also building like business partnerships. So being able to have multiple businesses instead of just one, you can't be the CEO of 4 or 5 companies. So if you have business relationships, business partnerships, you can expand and horizontally integrate way faster with those other people than competing against those other people. So I know that was pretty in depth, but
Yeah,
Edgar, what are your thoughts
I
on what
like
I had
that.
to say there?
No, I like that. In what you said, it reminded me of a book that I read, and this is probably the first book I recommend to a lot of people. The author is Dan Sullivan, but the book is called Who Not How. And in that book, in short, it talks about, we spend a lifetime trying to figure out, hey, how am I going to do this? Right? How can I get this done? Like, Davin, if your wife said, hey, I need you to go build me a patio in the backyard, you can probably figure out how to do it, but it would take a while, right? Versus asking the better question is, hey, who can help me build this patio? And it gets done that much quicker, right? You save yourself time, energy, and money by paying someone to a professional, right? Like you talked about that tow truck driver, bringing in someone within the network or within a relationship you built, they can get you to help you get that done a lot faster, right? Building those strategic partnerships and getting to know people in the community, that pays itself tenfold in the long run. And in building those strategic partnerships, it's not just about the interim, right? You think about like, hey, Davin, if I was to sell you coaching or strategic planning or, try to help you with your business, yeah, I may win your business, right? However, if I asked you to look at your contacts in your phone, you probably have over 200 to 300 people that you know. So if I took the time to build relationships, get to know you and empower you and help you and say, hey, how can I help this guy pay it forward and move that needle forward? It's more than likely I will unlock those relationships versus locking them up trying to win your business.
Yeah, exactly. If somebody comes up to me and they're like, oh, I need a property manager, I'm already on my heels, right? Like everybody wants to meet a property manager to get work from them. All right. And so the minute somebody starts looking for a connection, I instantly get on the defense and I'm like, well, is my connection going to make money or save money from this introduction, or is this going to waste their time? Right. Versus if you get to know me and I know, like, and trust you, and you're like, hey, look, a property manager connection help out, right? Greases the wheels, right? Exactly. If you sent me clients, if you've put an effort that shows me like you donate to charity, like I'm going to give you extra opportunity even without asking for it, right? And so I think a lot of people think the same way. And once you're in tune with that, you can get access to, again, those relationships by understanding how you give out relationships,
Yeah. Yeah, it reminds me of this formula. It's R times R equals R square. And you're like, what does that mean, right? And it's in conjunction of what we're talking about. If we build relationships, we get those relationships results. That's going to complement them with retention, right? Now, that R square is where the best compliment in the world when you take care of people is when they start referring you. Right. And it's because you're doing great work for them. One thing that I've learned in building these relationships, and this is why I love business so much, is that when you get to know people, you genuinely, like, the mind is very curious, right? We ask really great questions. And I surround myself with people who ask great questions versus the traditional questions of what you run into at normal networking events, right? And that's what gravitated me to you, to Spark, and the people within that community, is that it's about, hey, how can I help this person with their specific need right now? And who in my network can I unlock, right? Who can I tap on the shoulder and say, hey, you got to get to know this guy, or hey, you got to get to know this person because within what they're looking for, they can help, right? And building those relationships within that formula, getting those referrals, and building, that community of people that we build within our circles, what has got us to where we're at, right? What got us here wasn't what we did on an individual level. It's, hey, it was a group and team effort within our community.
Yeah, absolutely. And you hit the nail on the head too. Like sometimes when you tap into that one productive person that can really kind of change your trajectory, like it's oftentimes really not just one person. It's like an entire community of people that you get access to. And I think people, they want to focus on like the high end individuals. They're like, okay, this person has a lot to give. And so they just focus on givers and they don't realize like, look, like being a giver means getting burned 99 times to find another giver, right?
Hmm.
But once you find another giver, you're suddenly boom in the community of an entire group of people. And I think that's what people really underestimate. They're just going out there looking for generous people instead of being generous people that attracts generous people. So like that's that, you know, and it's hard, like being a generous person. Like I'm optimistic, but I know that when I send out a business card or I do a follow-up call, like most of the time I'm talking to a person that's only ready to receive and not ready to reciprocate, you know?
Yeah.
And so my biggest encouragement to people is just like, be that person, like be that person who gives freely without, first of all, needing to just reciprocate, because reciprocating is great. But there's no initiative in the reciprocation, right? So like being willing to give first, that's how you tap into those like really deep networks of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed. Now, another one I wanted to talk about was passion behind what got you to where you're the trajectory you're heading, right? Because when you initially got into the business, you got your real estate license, right? And then you immediately identified, oh man, there's a bigger opportunity. How did that happen? And what's that journey been like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I worked underneath a mentor at first, which I highly recommend. Like I highly recommend working for somebody else's company and not just working underneath a boss, but a true mentor, and having somebody willing to teach you the business. And that was critical. But what I found, what I got me into the business was a niche that I saw was untapped. Right, I saw a niche. People didn't see it. People didn't know that it existed, but it was there. And most real estate agents were blind to it. Now every real estate agent is very well aware of working with Airbnb investors, working with college students and their parents, working with just traditional investors ready to retire. That was a very well-aware market. But when I first started getting into this business, you had investor agents and you had residential agents, and they didn't cross very much. So that was kind of that first niche. But then I realized that like once you do something and you're successful at it and you start making money at it, you can only make money as fast as you can work, right? Which is great because I can work a lot faster than most people. But what's terrible about that is you meet people that you're like, man, like, you know, I don't want to compete against this person, but like they're struggling and I can help them, right? And so when you find a way to make money helping people that you would have helped for free, and you would have done for no cost, and you get to like enjoy the fruits of twice the amount of productivity, and then that person tells somebody how you help them out, and then you get to coach through that person. I think that's super rewarding. And it took me a long time to get from self-producing to getting other people to produce. I mean, that second step probably took twice as long as learning how to help my own customers. So yeah, the leadership part took about 4 years to learn. The doing it part took 2 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're gonna get into business, like give yourself time. Like I can't tell you how many comments I see on the internet, like, oh, I'm broke today, but I'm making a commitment to myself that I'm going to be a millionaire in a year. It's like you're worth more time. You're worth more than a year. Like if you don't get to that $1 million mark in a year and you're disappointed, like why would you give up on yourself? Like it took me 6 years. I'm not a millionaire, but I'm comfortable, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah. So Edgar, how about you? Like what for you was that like? Because you changed businesses a couple times since I've known you twice.
Yeah.
What was that initial trajectory that showed you like I need to do something different?
Yeah, for me, and that's one, I want to unpack a little bit about what you said, and then I'll address that.
All good.
Question,
Yeah.
because you said some really powerful things, man. Like it's a journey. It's a journey in where you're at and what you're doing, right? And learning from, hey, here's where I started, And you said some really great things as far as, hey, find a mentor, find someone that's going to guide you, right? In order to lead, you got to learn how to follow. If you can't follow, how can you ever lead if you don't know what that roadmap or those ebbs and flows of business look like, right? Even in life in general, right? You think about relationships, right? Is you want guidance from someone who's seasoned, right? Someone who's been through some of those hard times in life that hey, look at them. They've been a great example, and look how they came out on the other side. So you said some really powerful things of, hey, find someone in that industry and latch on and, pick their brain and see how, you can work with them to learn from them, right? So for me, Davin, I would say I started in the wealth management industry, right? And man, my journey's been interesting, like from Marine Corps to working in the corporate world for 10, almost 11 years. So I've actually shifted careers. I'm on what I call my final destination. But coming out of the Marine Corps, I had no clue what I was going to do, to be honest. I did have a job lined up in LA, but I'm really, really glad I decided to stay in Vegas. And that turned into an 11-year career with the phone company that taught me a lot of corporate structure, right? Why companies do certain things. I was always curious. I always asked questions of, hey, why don't we do this? And they're like, well, that's beyond our capability. And I'm like, okay. So if you ask chain of command, right, like military, and you keep asking up and you ask really great questions, maybe they'll do something. But I come to realize in that journey of, they gave me a great foundation financially, right? Really good trajectory towards where I was headed. However, I got tired of not being able to do impactful things, right? And having those handcuffs. And I don't like to operate that way. So that led me into the wealth management industry, right? I first got licensed as an insurance agent with my health and life license. And that first company that I saw opportunity with, I saw that the sky was the limit, but the training was not great. So that's what led me to try to find something of like being military, right? Like, hey, you put me on a track, I'm going to run circles around people. But if there's no track, it'll take me a while to figure out, and I could shoot from the hip. But I also give myself grace in saying, hey, let's see what happens in 90 days. And if in 90 days I can't figure this thing out, it's on to the next thing. So I build a business plan, and I give myself leeway, right, just to protect myself financially. And once I got into the wealth management industry, I saw that I was making an impact, but I could never understand once I started working with business owners and I niched down, they never had time. And I'm like, wait a minute, you're the only other, you own this company. What do you mean you don't have time? And it was the same thing over and over. I'm like, hey, look, if this relationship's going to work long term, I'm a very proactive planner, right? I'm very proactive when it comes to making sure we get ahead of things versus being retroactive. And now we got to react and work backwards. So when they kept saying that they didn't have enough time, it again, curiosity, right, drew my mind. And then I just straight out asked one time, and it was the same thing for every owner of, hey, walk me through what you mean you don't have time. You are the owner. You can take an hour. You can't step away for an hour. And they're like, no, I'm too busy working in my business. I'm doing the day to day. And that's where I was like, interesting, which led me into the coaching industry, right? In getting into business coaching is when I sold, I got out of the industry and I got into a completely different one of, hey, let's make a bigger impact. And the three common issues that we find is people struggle with not enough time in the day, or, hey, I can't find the right people, which is a team, right? And, hey, I need more money, right? I need more capital. I need more resources. So within those three, I niched down, and knowing that, hey, I can make a massive impact within the trade industry, knowing that they're very skilled at what they do. However, when it comes to running a business, there's a lot to learn. And now having the accreditation to do the business valuations, which is where I'm at today, right, is I can help you in that journey, but we need the roadmap, right? If we have no roadmap, how can I properly guide you to where you want to go, where your destinations are? And everyone's going to be different, right? We're all in different seasons, but just giving me the ability to say, hey, let's look at 50,000 foot overview, and let's hyper focus into like what those goals and long-term longevity is according to what you want to do and how we're going to get there. So having that ability and what led me there is just, how can I make a bigger impact? I've learned and I've studied from what I've learned in other companies, and I apply that to everything I do now, right? Is that from working for the phone company and learning the corporate structure and giving my team flexibility of like, hey, if you think this is a great idea, let's try it. Let's see what happens, right? Now, build a plan around it. Let's not just shoot from the hip. You build a detailed plan around, hey, this is what I want to try. Cool. Let's look at the positive and negatives, right? Pros and cons. What could go wrong? As long as it's not detrimental to the business and financially impact us, yeah, I'm going to empower you to take that to the next level, because what if it works? And now
Boundaries, right?
Yeah. And if you don't encourage people to take risks, I mean, with risk comes big reward, as long as you have a plan.
Absolutely.
So it's a long-winded answer, but that's what led me to where I'm at now.
Yeah, no, I so just like how you unpack kind of what I talked about, I wanted to highlight a couple of things that you talked about. The lack of time and the ability to explore things. Like, for example, when you said like you give your team that ability to explore things, but it has to have a plan. Well, that's a boundary, right? And a lot of people are like, oh, like boundaries, constrict me. Boundaries do this, boundaries do that. No, boundaries create room. If you didn't have 4 walls in your house, there would be 0 square footage, right? Mm-hmm. And so a lot of people really don't understand that boundaries actually create time. They actually create money. They actually create leadership, right? They create opportunity. And so like when people don't operate within those boundaries, they fill up the space and then there's no room to move, right? So like it's super critical to like also stay on mission too. Like, for example, I started my business because I believe in the investment of time, right? I believe that you can invest extra time earlier on in your life and sacrifice that time and then reap rewards of that time and get your time back later in life. Mm-hmm. I'm just old enough, 27 years old. I'm starting to work less hours. And it's amazing, right? Like my daughter's on the way. I'm able to coach agents, right? I have a predictable client load. Like I don't have so many clients that I don't have time for anybody, but I've got enough clients to make a living, Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things. Like it takes management of your time, like because you can't control it, but you can say, you know what? I'm going to sacrifice it here so I can get it there. And if you don't have that plan, you won't have the time, right? You'll lose it, right? Like you said, with those business owners, they're working in their business so much they don't have time to escape their business. And there's a really good quote from there's a guy who owns different Jamba Juice chains, right? Mm-hmm. And people were talking about how low his profit margins are. Like on one of his stores, he only makes $30,000 a year. And the guy's like, well, like, couldn't you, take over the management position who you're paying $70,000 for, and then you can make $100,000 a year off that business? And he goes, yeah, well, I hire the managers so I can own 10 businesses. And so, like, too many people are optimizing instead of maximizing. And if you can't maximize in your business because you don't have time, you're going to constantly struggle. Yeah. Constantly. Because you don't have boundaries. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where I got my greatest lessons, right? Like learning leadership early on in the Marine Corps is what helped establish building those boundaries, right? You think about chain of command, and within those boundaries, you just can't go straight to as a private first class or lance corporal. You just can't go straight to the first sergeant and say, hey, I got an idea. You literally got to run that through your chain of command. And that's what helps you create those structure and boundaries and knowing, hey, if you're going to do this, and that's how I learned a lot of this stuff is hard lessons in life in the Marine Corps, is build a plan around it, right? Build a plan and have what are the rules within the plan and how are we going to execute? And if it's detailed, great. Now we can present that to the chain of command. And it's going to go from that hierarchy to the non-commissioned officers, from non-commissioned to staff non-commissioned, right? And now they're going to take that up to that first sergeant or gunny and say, hey, here's what my Marines created, and here's how we can build a detailed plan, and here's how we're going to save some time by doing X. But I had to learn to follow great leaders and have great mentors at a young age. That, man, something you said and how it weaves in and ties together is, you're 27, you're a light years ahead of me, right? And I'm ecstatic that you've gotten to where you're at by learning and having great mentors, right? You took one route, I took another route, but look where we're at now. And we're able to support one another. And this is what, why I love doing this podcast with you is I learn so much from you. Even though you feel you're young, you're way more mature in age than and you know so much. Not only do you know a lot, but you surround yourselves with really smart people. And
you have to, as an entrepreneur. You have to. Yeah,
by doing so, look where you're at. And it's because you identified something early on. Back to the relationship thing, right? You surrounded yourself with great mentors, great people, great relationships, and look where you're at. So to tie it back full circle is, man, extremely proud. And now, what's that next step for you? You said you got your daughter coming. So what does life look like, in 5 years for Davin?
Yeah, absolutely. The goal in 5 years is to continue building out the team, to continue growing the team, to double it pretty much. And so what we've grown in 4 years, I have complete confidence that we'll definitely double within the next 5 years again. And to have somebody in that pool of roughly 10 to 15 people really be able to step up and take a little bit more ownership and take a little bit more leadership and almost do what I do, right? And show them, like, hey, look, like, you can be an agent, you can also be a coach in this business. The 5-year plan is to not have everything on my shoulders, because what's great is it's not everything on my shoulders right now, but all of the important stuff, there's still some time management that I can't replace. And so being able to share a little bit of that load would be nice in 5 years. Like, I could manage my business right now from Hawaii, sipping Mai Tais on the beach, but it would still take a couple hours on the phone to make sure that the business was running. Versus, like, it'd be nice to have a little bit of delegation from that kind of stuff. Other than that, five-year goal. I think that's about it. Yeah, just being able to see other leaders pop up within my organization, because I have some followers who follow me. I have some leaders who follow me in what I do, but they lead in their own businesses because they own multiple businesses, and real estate is a side job for them. And so it'd be nice to have a full-time realtor that was kind of really interested in coaching other agents. That'd be awesome. How about yourself? Where do you see yourself going next 5 years?
I like that cloning yourself, right? And having someone that can step up and begin to lead other leaders. I'll say for me, and I know we got 1 minute, so I'll make this quick. For me, the 5-year goal is just to continue to grow the team, right? And in order for the organization to keep growing, I got to keep employing and hiring other great military veteran leaders within my organization, since Master the Network is being built as a veteran-led company. My back-end support, back office staff will always be either a veteran spouse or military dependent. So I'm literally building this thing full throttle, and I have a good vision for it. So for me, in 5 years, I would say just keep empowering and hiring just like yourself.
Rock on. Cool stuff. Well, hey, we've been watching the Love of Business podcast here. Edgar, let's just briefly, how can people get in touch with you? And then I'll go ahead and wrap us up.
Man, best way for people to get a hold of me is either on my LinkedIn, or if you go to my website at masterthenetwork.com.
Rock on.
Contact info's on there.
Cool. Likewise, you can reach out to me via davinsundvik.com sunvicrealty.com or any of my social medias that have Sunvic Realty in the tagline. So with that being said, thank you for watching the Love of Business podcast, and we'll see you next time.
PR Connections Radio thanks you for watching this podcast. Check out more episodes of this show and our others at prconnectionsradio.com.